Florida regulators sign off on controversial water standards. By Jeff Burlew, USA Today Network. Tallahassee Democrat. Despite vehement opposition from environmental groups, state regulators signed off Tuesday on new standards for Florida's rivers, lakes and coastal waters that include less stringent requirements for certain toxic chemicals. The state's Environmental Regulation Commission approved the new human health criteria for surface waters in a 3-2 vote. The decision came after hours of emotional testimony from concerned citizens, who said the new standards will increase the risk that Floridians will get cancer from eating seafood and drinking water. Linda Young, executive director of the Florida Clean Water Network, which led the fight against the new standards, called the decision beyond outrageous. "This is a wholesale denial in Florida of the value of our lives," she said. "This is our governor, who is the person who's driving this, saying Floridians' lives don't matter. What matters are our industries, our corporations, making more money. And they can do that by putting more pollution in our waters." The Florida Department of Environmental Protection, under the Federal Clean Water Act, is required to periodically update limits on a number of toxic chemicals it will allow to be dumped into its surface waters. It tried to update standards on the books in 1992 but didn't win ERC approval. The agency, as part of its latest plan, updated limits for 43 of the 54 allowed chemicals, and added another 38 compounds to its list, nearly doubling the amount of the toxic compounds it regulates. About half of the chemicals regulated today, however, would have less stringent standards, and limits for most of the 80-plus chemicals would have less restrictive standards than U.S. Environmental Protection Agency recommendations, when factors like local seafood consumption are considered, opponents asserted. Drew Bartlett, DEP's Deputy Secretary for Ecosystem Restoration, said the new standards would protect the average Floridian at a cancer risk level of 1 in a million. Others would have higher or lower protection depending on how much they weigh and how much fish and water they consume. "What drove a lot of the changes are the toxicity values that EPA provided us," he said. "We just felt that it was critical to get that information updated. And it's critical that we have these new parameters. That is a complete lift for protecting human health." An overflow crowd of activists, concerned citizens and others traveled from across the state to attend the ERC meeting and a morning protest outside DEP offices. They packed into one conference room and spilled over into another. Several speakers criticized the ERC, whose 7 members are appointed by the governor, for considering the new standards at a time when it is down to members. The vacant posts are set aside for representatives of local government and the environmental community. The disappointment from opponents was clear after the vote. "Baby killers," one man murmured. Another man stormed the dais to protest the vacancies and had to be escorted out by security. One woman stood speechless as tears ran down her face. U.S. Representative Gwen Graham, D-Tallahassee, issued a statement calling the vote insulting and unconscionable, given statewide water quality problems and the Flint, Michigan, water crisis. Floridians from across the state traveled to Tallahassee to express those concerns, and the Environmental Regulation Commission ignored them, she said. Governor Rick Scott is ignoring them. They're not just out of touch, they're completely disregarding the will of the people they represent. Under the plan, limits for benzene, a carcinogen used in fracking and is known to cause leukemia, would nearly double. Less stringent limits also would be in place for arsenic, a well-known poisonous substance, and PCBs, a banned substance linked to numerous health problems. In an age where we all either have a family member with cancer or a neighbor with cancer, the EP's proposal to allow higher pollution standards will result in greater harm to Floridians, said Drive. Ron Seth, a member of Physicians for Social Responsibility, Commissioner Adam Helber, who voted against the plan, said the new standards relied heavily on regional, not local data. And he questioned why DEP staff changed its initial proposal for benzene, which saw allowable amounts lowered over recent weeks. "I feel like there's a fatal flaw there," he said. "How would those other criteria change if we went back and did whatever was applied to the benzene?" Commission Chair Carrie Roth, who voted in favor of the standards, said that in practical effect, the plan would not lead to more toxins going into state waters. "It is more good than harm," she said. The new standards, which go to the EPA for final approval, will likely be challenged in court, though it wasn't immediately clear who might file a lawsuit. Young said her organization wouldn't mount an administrative challenge because the process is rigged. But she said the network may sue the EPA if it signs off on the criteria. Contact Jeff Burlew at jburlew@tallahassee.